Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the TriStar Sports Show. Jamie and I back here again for episode 19. Um, just to talk college football from this past week and this upcoming week. Well, let's start off, Jamie. The Vols were at home this past week against Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats, in a night game. Dark mode was in full effect. Vols got the win. We continue to keep on winning. What's your thoughts from the game?
Yeah, there's definitely some things that we could clean up going forward, but I thought all in all, the multiple possession win, 10-point win. Nico had a good game, could have had an amazing game if would have connected on some of those deep passes. Sampson uh, broke the record for rushing touchdowns. Was it single season? I've heard single season, I've heard career, and I've heard both.
Single season, yes. Career, he's five away, which
Okay.
he's definitely on pace to do this season.
Right. Okay. So either way, awesome for him. Super happy for him. Great player. Yeah. Didn't cover, I guess. So in the eyes of anyone who bet on us to cover, we didn't have the best game. Could have won by more, but our defense still hasn't allowed 20 points at all this season, and our offense is getting it done. Can't really hate on it too much.
Yeah, I'm going to flat out say that I think this is the best game that Nico has played this far as a Tennessee Vol, as far as just composure. He didn't really make any freshman mistakes. There's probably about maybe two or three passes that he wished he could have back, like as far as not good. Every other pass was pretty much right on the money. Um, there was probably four or five drops throughout this game that could have gave him more yards and touchdowns, but life happens, and he didn't let that derail him. He continued to get better and better throughout the game. I think the most important thing is if you watch the film, watch the tape, he's really starting to go through his reads a little bit more. Earlier this season, it seemed like he was looking down maybe one side of the field as he was just trying to get more comfortable. Now you can see him scan the whole field really quickly. He can make decisions and move with his legs, which we saw throughout Kentucky's game. There were some moments where he would climb the pocket, extend some plays, make some important throws on third downs. But yeah, obviously there's a couple plays you wish were completed because then we're talking an all-time performance. We're talking three touchdowns and 400 probably yards at this point.
Right.
There was a 50-something yard pass to Brazel that could have been a touchdown, and then the one over the middle of Nimrod, if he was able to pull that in and run the rest of the way, I think that was going to be another like 60, 70 yards. So,
Absolutely.
but not much to complain about. Yeah, obviously, shout out Dylan Sampson. And what a way to break the record on his run where all 11 guys were pushing him into the end zone, which to me, that's a sign of a well coached team that wants to be there. You don't get that at every single school. There's guys that aren't bought into the system. You can tell these guys are. That's an effort play. That's what that is. He was stopped short, I think, at the 3.5 yard line, and what could have been a gain of just 1 or 2 yards turned into a touchdown, and it ultimately was the game winner or the one that put him away. I don't know. Awesome to see. I liked even seeing Nico get in there. I don't necessarily want to see your quarterback try to throw too many blocks, especially at his stature. He's not necessarily the biggest quarterback in the world, but
Yeah.
he was the first to say that he helped push the pile, which there's definitely a question about that. There was a lot of other bigger guys involved pushing the pile, but I don't know. Good for Dylan Sampson. I hope he breaks the career record, which is insane that he broke the single game record in 8 games, or single season in 8 games, which the previous holder was like 80 years ago, and he did it in 10 games because there was only 10 games in a season back then.
Hmm.
So he's well on pace to break the career record in 3 seasons, which first season, I don't even know how many he got his freshman year. if he had any, and then
He had a
last
decent
year he
amount
kind of
last year, but was still splitting
he sprinkled
reps.
in last year. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's having a heck of a year. You start seeing him in the top 10 of some of these Heisman boards that you can see. He's sneaking in at that 9 or 10 spot throughout the country. Who knows? Maybe he keeps this pace. He continues to climb if quarterbacks continue to kind of struggle in the big games. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about that game other than keep it rolling, clean up some minor details, clean up the drops, clean up the. I think he had one fumble, Samson did, but that's like his second fumble ever as a Vol, so I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
Get
they were in back to back games, which is kind of wild.
it
But
was, and I don't
I
know.
mean, I'm sure he'll want to put that to rest. I don't
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
I know. I mean, yeah. Just to harp on the defense real quick. How in the world have they not given up 20 points in a game? That's
Lights out.
remarkable.
Yeah,
I mean, especially first play of the game, I think was a 50-yard run or close to 50 yards, and they pushed the ball all the way down the field. But lo and behold, they got in the red zone, 4th and 2. They went for it and didn't get it. And it's
right.
like bend don't break. Those they refuse to break. There was the one touchdown late in the game where Jamon McCoy had almost, I think, perfect coverage, but the guy caught it with one hand, so there's not much you can do about that. It seems like that's only one of the few ways that you can really score about against us is you have to make a big time play. You really do. Um, not many drives this season has someone can just dinked and dunked down the field and eventually scored a touchdown. Other than, gosh, probably a couple drives this season, which is nothing to complain about. Hopefully that streak continues next week. I don't know if we can go the whole season by doing that, but
Who knows?
I
Why
didn't think
not?
we'd be. I didn't think we'd be 8 games in, and even this would be a conversation. So
Right.
I'm okay with that. And yeah, I mean, also crazy stat that I've heard is only one quarterback has played the whole game against the Tennessee Vols this season, and that's Jalen Milrow. We have injured a lot of quarterbacks, to say the least, and it's quite literally been every game this season. And then there's also been a couple that just got benched because of blowouts or not playing good.
Performance.
And
Yeah.
so if you're Carson Beck in a couple weeks, put on some extra bubble wrap and watch out because which he's been struggling. So
Right. He has been.
I don't see
Don't
them
want,
pulling him in that game.
don't want to look
Don't
ahead
look
though.
behind. Don't look past Mississippi State. I know. I know. I knew what you were gonna say. I knew what you were gonna say.
Hey.
Yeah. So that'll be our segue into the Mississippi State game this weekend.
Right.
It is homecoming on Rocky Top. Um, the Bulldogs coming to town. I think they're 2-7 now. Not pretty. They've had a rough year. They played Georgia semi-close. I know they lost 41-31 in that game, so they put up some points in that one. Um, that was the game where Kirby Smart, I think, pushed the quarterback of Mississippi State.
Yeah, I remember that.
Um, I think Mississippi State, did they lose at Toledo this year? Was that who it was?
Toledo. Yep.
And got beat bad, I'm pretty sure. I think they were close with UMass last week until they eventually pulled away. I don't know who their other win is against. I don't think it's an SEC opponent.
It's Eastern Kentucky, first game of the season.
And what was the score of that?
56-7.
Okay. Well,
Started the season great, but yeah, the uh, 24-point loss to Toledo, losing to Arizona State. Yeah, it hasn't been looking good.
yikes.
And they also have us, Missouri, and Ole Miss the last 3 games of the season. So not the easiest schedule in the
Um,
world.
yeah, they're struggling. And the one thing I don't like is what we kind of talk about is the spread being 24 points. That's kind of kind of sus. You don't typically like to see a spread that big in an SEC game just because crazier has happened, unfortunately, in this sport. I don't foresee that happening this weekend. As far as losing goes, I could be wrong. Knock on wood. And honestly, don't know much about Mississippi State. That's probably the team I know least about in the SEC this season.
Yeah, they haven't really done
Just kind
much.
of, they've kind of just flown under the radar. You kind of forget they're there. I saw like a cool photo someone posted of the last time we played Mississippi State, and
Hmm.
just the comparison of what Neyland looked like compared to today. I mean, that stadium was like empty, empty for that game.
When was it?
Um, I believe I believe that was the Jeremy Pruitt era. You can look this up and test my knowledge on this one. Um,
Okay. Was it like Dak Prescott?
uh, no, no, no. It was after that. I'm gonna guess 2018,
19. You're close.
19. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I because the reason why we were posting that too was we just sold out the UTEP game coming up later this year, and that
There you
makes
go.
20 consecutive sellout games in Neyland Stadium. And the crazy stat was apparently Jeremy Pruitt never had a single sellout in his tenure in Knoxville. So just just to make things worse. I think Brian Maurer was heavily playing in the Mississippi State game the last time we played him. So
That's a
a lot
name.
of new faces, a lot better of a team we are now. I think we were like 2-4 that game going into that game. Some ugly
Hmm.
stuff.
10-20 final
I think,
score.
yeah, one a wonderful display of football. I'm sure. Um, yeah, I mean, go in there. Don't look ahead to Georgia. Don't somehow get in the injury department. You don't need that at this point in the year. If we get
Nope.
up big, pull. Don't be afraid to pull the starters a little early. I think a lot of our rotational guys are good enough to hold the lead against Mississippi State. I think we're at a point in the hypo era where we're probably deep enough to play a lot of backups in the second half and be fine. Which,
Right.
I mean, we rotate like crazy on defense anyways, so
And they say like 13
should be
defensive linemen.
it's close to it. I
Yeah.
mean that's an insane number that you can trust, and it's
And
not
somehow
it's not
Pierce
13
still.
defensive linemen.
What were you saying?
I'm just saying like it's not like 13 defensive linemen have played in the whole season. We're talking on an average
Yeah.
Saturday. Yeah,
Right. And somehow Pierce still leads the nation in like pressure rate. I think it's like over
yeah, because
20%, which is just absurd.
every time he's in there, he's a factor.
Right.
He definitely saved his best ball for SEC play, which has been nice to see.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think he registered a sack until Oklahoma.
Yeah, I don't expect him to have the biggest game this week unless we need him to for some reason, which we probably have bigger problems than James Pierce if we need him to have a big game this week. But I mean, he'll get some snaps in. He'll probably go out there and contribute like he always does. But I don't expect him. He'll probably be one of the first players that we have on a decent snap count.
And on the offensive side, you just got to continue to ramp up the offense a little bit. I mean, they definitely were attempting to do that in the Kentucky game because
Right.
I think they know deep down when we go to Athens, you're probably not going to be able to just run the ball 30 times with Sampson and win that game. You might. Georgia's defense has not been as good as they have in years past, and Tennessee's defense is good enough to probably shut down Georgia's offense a little bit. So, I mean, maybe that's the game plan. But again, Heupel still likes to take the deep shots here or there, and I would like to see them actually hit for a game and see like a few of them hit in the same game would be nice.
Right. Absolutely.
Seems like we kind of been asking for that for the last 4 weeks, but can't really complain too much. You're winning,
Yeah, I
I,
mean, hey,
and it's not like Nico is overthrowing them by 10 yards. That's not really the case here. So it's not.
right,
If he does overthrow him, it's by a yard or two, which no harm, no foul. And if he throws it on the money, it seems like it's been dropped. So, which that's it. That's a conversation. The drop conversation. I think I've gotten to the point where I think our wide receiver room might be too deep, and that's kind of been almost a problem in a way. And the reason why I say that is I think we rotate so many guys that our guys are struggling to get into a true rhythm in the game.
right,
I think wide receivers are guys in the field who really ride off momentum, and it kind of seems like, hey, you just made a 20-yard play, we're immediately subbing them out. Whereas you watch NFL or something like that. AJ Brown, for example, he's the type of guy where you feed him early, he's gonna have a big day. And
right.
what
I
I
mean,
just kind of wish we would maybe ride the hot hand a little bit better than we have. I understand you want fresh legs, but I have a hard time believing these guys aren't conditioned enough at this point in the season.
right.
So I don't
I just
know. I mean,
I don't know. When it comes to our wide receiver room, I still don't feel like we have a number one, which I mean could be because we don't let anyone kind of assume that role, but nobody's really taken advantage of it whenever they've had the chance because typically a number one kind of just emerges. Um, I mean, early in the season we tried to manufacture touches for Squirrel White, and he never really did much with them. Brew's always been kind of a guy that you can go to when you need him. He's like a good possession guy, big body, but we don't really have that uh, number one guy in the offense. I still stand on the thing that I said at the beginning of the season that I think we have six guys that could start anywhere in the country, but it's starting to look like we have six like wide receiver twos and threes, and not really a wide receiver one.
I
But
mean, I think Brew. Well, I'd say Thornton and Brew is like wide receiver one and one A, one B kind of situation. I
right,
mean, I'm looking at the
probably
stats. Brew leads the team in receptions, yet leads the team in yards and touchdowns. Brew is still yet to score a touchdown this season, which I think is kind of
yeah,
wild. Um,
it is.
I mean,
I heard
I
a
guess in the red zone, we don't
I
really throw the ball too much. So,
no, we do not. But I heard a thing about when I was watching the game. He has some sort of NIL deal with like a cookie company. I forget which cookie company it is, but supposedly he's supposed to get like either half a dozen or a dozen cookies for every touchdown he scores this season. And the announcers were kind of dogging on him a little bit. They're like, nobody's gotten any cookies this season.
hey, that company's probably a little bit excited. They ain't losing no money. So,
You're right.
but yeah, I mean, when the game's been on the line, it seems like we kind of stop the rotation a little bit, and we typically go with our best four, which is Brew, Thornton, Brazel, and Squirrel.
Hmm.
Squirrel still hasn't looked 100% since his whole shoulder thing. I don't know. He hasn't been playing all that much. But when those guys are on the field, it seems like that's when we're at our best. And I kind of wish we would lean on those four a little bit heavier than we have, and
Hmm.
then incorporate the tight ends, which I think we've done a great job of using our tight ends this season.
Especially last week. I was
Kisselman has
very
been,
pleased.
yeah, Kisselman's been a hell of a addition to this team and this offense, especially because he came in and not many people knew much about him except for the fact that he transferred in from Alabama. He didn't really have any stats. He was more of a blocking tight end, and here we are throwing the ball to him a ton. So,
Right. He's capable. That's for
uh,
sure.
I mean, and then on top of that, what's made our running game so good is him and Holden Stays have had excellent blocking on the outside. And if you have the luxury to use a tight end as a sixth offensive lineman without having to bring in another offensive lineman to be in heavy set or something like that, that's a
Right.
good luxury to have.
I agree.
And Ethan Davis too. He's Ethan Davis is quietly having a pretty solid year. You don't really feels like you never
Yeah,
really see him, but I mean, he's got 9 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. So, and he blocks well. So
he's also still young. So
he is.
I
He
mean,
is.
I don't know if Kisselman or Stays have another year of eligibility. So it could be
Um,
Ethan
I
Davis's
don't.
team next year.
I know Kisselman definitely does not. And then Holden Stays is listed as a junior on the website, so he could come back another season if he wanted to.
Okay. Well,
And
yeah. Who
Kisselman could
knows?
have a super senior year. I'm not sure. So,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then, but yeah, go in there, take care of business, pad the stats a little if you want to, get the starters out of there, stay healthy, and get ready for Athens. That's the goal for homecoming this weekend. And another night game. Forgot to mention that. We just keep Vols after dark. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it's every week. It feels like at this point.
yeah. It seems like Heupel's first year or two, it was like mainly all noon games. And then we just went straight into night games. We kind of skipped the part where the 3:30 kickoffs happened.
Which I think the reason why it's felt like so much this year is 3:30 on CBS is gone. You know,
Right. That's true.
SEC moved to ABC, which there is still a 3:30 slate. However, that's not the best. It used to be you take the best SEC game of the week and put it at 3:30 on CBS, whereas now the 3:30 on ABC is not necessarily the best game of the week in the SEC. It's just it's normally a good game, but
Yeah.
they kind of saved the best for at night, and then which obviously Tennessee Mississippi State's not game of the week or anything like that, but they're going to put us on prime time because we're a top 10 team. It's just now next week when we play Georgia, when it's a top 10 matchup, that's going to be another night game, and that's going to be probably college game day. We'll have to see about that. I can't remember who else was on that weekend. I think we looked at it earlier this year, but let me take a look. It was somebody else where it seemed like it could be a possibility they were going to go there.
I got the week
Let's
pulled up real
see.
quick.
It looks like it would just honestly be us because I'm looking at the rest of it. It does. I think the scheduling or the way the year is played out, some of these games have gotten a little bit worse looking. Like
Right. We're the only ranked matchup besides Clemson and Pittsburgh, which I don't see college game day going there.
no. So yeah,
Uh, yeah,
I'm assuming as long as both teams win this weekend, then I'm sure that would be the location for game day.
absolutely. Could be SEC Nation at the worst, but who knows?
So yeah, we can kind of wrap that up and talk about some of the other games throughout the country this past Saturday. If you would like to pick one and start
Yeah,
with it.
for sure. I'll start with a game that I was kind of tuned into the most. That'll be the Florida Georgia game, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
the final score of the game. Georgia turned it on late, but man, for a good bit of that game, kind of up until up until Lagway went down, and even maybe a little bit after that. But I think you could probably pinpoint that as where things started to fall apart. Florida was giving Georgia some serious issues, some serious trouble. I mean, Beck was struggling, had a couple picks early on. I thought Florida had a legitimate shot to win, and then of course Florida gets hit again to their quarterback position. Now they're on QB3, which I don't know if anything's came out about Lagway or if he's done. I know Mertz is done, but yeah,
I believe the MRI was optimistic. I think they
okay,
said there's a chance he can return this season. It's not done for the year kind of thing.
Okay,
But
well that's good. You never want to see a player like that go down. I think Lagley could be a good quarterback going forward in the SEC. But yeah, Georgia got it done late, but they looked beatable early on, and Florida Florida kind of I think exposed some flaws that hopefully Tennessee can capitalize on in a couple weeks.
their rush defense is not great. That's kind of where they've been weak at this season.
Right.
Bama kind of took advantage of that early on. Their secondary is kind of hit or miss. I don't know. They've looked beatable all season. That's why they have a loss against Bama. I mean, they won by one at Kentucky. Played close with Florida against the third string for majority of the game was the third string, and he didn't. I would love to know how many passes he even threw in that game. It wasn't many, if,
Yeah.
but
I mean, best
I don't
game's
know.
definitely Texas.
I mean, Florida hung around and hung around and hung around. I think it was 20-20 in the fourth quarter, or going into the fourth quarter, or close to it, something like that. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what to think of Georgia this year. We have some optimism for this week, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. I just, I don't know, and that's what's confusing is like Tennessee's probably going to get them at their best in a couple weeks. So
Right. Yeah. Seems like they turn it on whenever they need to, like against Texas and whatnot. But they're still a good team. But yeah, Florida definitely had some Georgia fans and probably some Georgia players and coaches a little nervous on Saturday.
I mean, I know I was trying to tell people. I said, don't count out Florida going in that Georgia game because, which I know it sounds simpler now that it's been done, but it's a good rivalry game. It's an underrated rivalry game in the SEC. People kind of forget about it. They play on a neutral site every year in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, um, and there's been some heated games between these two teams, and they don't quite like each other. So I
I
figured
think
Florida would hang around a little bit.
mhm. I think a reason that people kind of forget about the rivalry is at least in recent like probably since the 2000s ish. I feel like neither team has really been good at the same time. Like it seems like always like the Tebow years, Georgia wasn't really all that, and now Georgia's good and Florida's not really super good. So I feel like neither one of them has ever, or I feel like one of them's always been kind of clearly the better team on paper than the other as of recent years, which has led to maybe some more lopsided games. But no doubt, it's one of the biggest rivalries in the SEC.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing I think from that rivalry that I've ever seen was it was during the Tebow days, and it was the first time I think Tebow played him,
He
and
lost.
Georgia actually, yeah, that Georgia won. And when they scored, like on the first touchdown of the game, I think Georgia had their whole bench go celebrate in the end zone, and it was a purposeful move by the coach, I guess, for like morale reasons. Even though it was
Hmm.
going to be a 15-yard penalty, I guess it was like a psychological thing that they can do it or whatever. They won that game. Then the following year, I think Florida beat the crap out of them. I think
Yeah,
they got their revenge in
probably.
that one.
I
So
think
yeah,
they
underrated
said
rivalry in the
Fromm.
SEC for sure.
I think they said Fromm was one of the only and like definitely the most recent quarterback from either team to go undefeated like in his tenure at one of the schools against the other team. I think Fromm went 3-0 as a starter against Florida. Um, but yeah, minor minor stat that I heard while watching the game. But yeah, I'll get into the. I'll let you take some of these because I'll be honest. I didn't watch too many of the games this past Saturday, but what'd you think about uh, the Duke Miami game? Looked like Duke had a legit shot there early on.
I don't understand what happened. It fell apart really
It
fast.
did. It really did.
I can't remember the exact score. Duke was up at one point, but they were up. I don't know. I would say 10 maybe at one time, and Miami then tied it up, and then They ended up winning by like 20. Was it 20 or 30 that they ended up winning by?
20, like 22 to be exact.
which like all of their points came from like the second half. I mean, they went on an
Yeah,
absolute tear. Kim Ward, I think, realized what was happening and kind of flipped on the switch a little bit. He started getting Restrepo, his one of his favorite wide receivers, going, and the deep ball was hitting, and Miami just didn't look back. Duke really, I don't know. Miami's been on the ropes a few times this season, but they just keep finding ways, whether the refs help them or not, and find ways to win. So
yeah. They've
Canes are
got that
still
lead and
undefeated.
never looked back. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
it kind of felt like Duke's chances went out the window when they blew the lead like that fast. And
Hmm.
it's when you do that, you have to be able to answer, and they never did. And Miami piled it on to make it look like it was never close.
Yeah, the box score. Sometimes the box score is eluding, but Miami definitely came out of the game looking like the dominant team. I guess the next game I want to talk about is probably the Vanderbilt Auburn game because it was a close game for the most part of the game, and Vandy got out of there with the win. I think they're just continuing to prove that maybe they're not a competing team in the SEC necessarily. Like I think there's a clear difference between the us and Georgia and Texas of the world and Vanderbilt. But I think Vanderbilt's right up there with the Kentucky's in the like as far as like conference play goes. I think they've solidified themselves as a middle of the pack SEC team this year, which is a good. I mean, that's a pretty good place to be considering where Vandy has been recently or in the past. So good win for them, but they got to come crawling back, or like you said before the podcast, they're bound to come crashing back to earth at some point this season, and just a matter of
Yeah, I
time.
think I think the stat was Diego Pavia's 3-0 versus Hugh Freeze. I think that's what I saw. Um, beat him
Like
Vandy versus Auburn, obviously, and then when he was at New Mexico, he beat Auburn with New Mexico last year, and then I think he
Liberty or
beat
something.
Hugh Freeze when he was, when he was the coach at Liberty 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was. So he,
I like
I'm
Pavia a lot.
sure I do too.
I,
I'm sure Hugh Freeze is tired of seeing him for what it's kind of a random football stat is the
right.
matchup between those two. Yeah, like you said, they've consistently keep finding ways to win or stay relevant in this season. They're bowl eligible for the first time since 2018, I think is what it was.
Hey, good for them.
So, and right now they're playing to play spoiler and get a better bowl game. That's what they're playing for. So,
Absolutely. And they've
not a
definitely
team you really
spoiled
want
some
to play
teams
this year.
already. No,
Yeah, they have. They
definitely
have.
not last game of the season or anything like that, right?
No, to an in-state team, no.
But anyways, we'll cover that whenever we get to that week. Um, I mean, other than that, Clemson did not pull through for us. I know Tennessee didn't either; they didn't cover. But the leg I was most upset with when it came to our parlay of the week last week was definitely the Clemson, mainly because that leg was pretty heavily convinced by me. Pretty, I was pretty convinced myself that Clemson would beat Louisville pretty handedly, and they got beat by 12 points. So I don't really know what to make of it, but Clemson came crashing back to earth.
Yeah, Louisville quieted that crowd early in that game and just it never really looked
Yeah,
back. As far as our parlay goes, like you said, those were the two legs that didn't hit. The Tennessee one felt like it didn't hit, but it felt more likely to hit just because we missed 3 field goals, so that would have been the covering right there, and then also dropped some touchdowns. So we were
yeah,
at least in the ballpark on that one. Clemson, on the other hand, didn't even win. Nonetheless, cover. So
Yeah.
swung and miss on that one. That's all right. I don't know much about that game. I saw the highlights. Clemson was up like 7-3 early in that game, and I don't think did they score again. What was the final in that one?
Final score was 33-21.
So they put up a couple more touchdowns, but I think they put up one. I think they put up a couple late, like in almost
Probably.
in garbage time. So not a good game for Clemson.
No, not at all. But speaking of a leg of our parlay of the week that did hit and hit big, South Carolina whooped number 10 A&M. I mean,
They
44
sure
to
did.
20.
As Josh Pate likes to say from 24/7 Sports, he says he calls it Cocktober for the Gamecocks in October. And granted, this game was technically November 1st or 2nd, whatever it was. So,
Yeah,
but it was putting a wrap on spooky season. So they got one last game in before that went to rest, and they showed up and showed out at home. I think it was 20-20 at halftime. I think is what it was, and
dang.
South Carolina in the second half just went on a tear, went on an absolute tear, and
That's huge.
A&M
That's huge for
kind
us.
of got. It is huge for us. We moved up to number 3 now, and I I think A&M was due to get exposed a little bit. They lost, or I think it was the first game of the year or second game of the year to Notre Dame, and they just kind of beat up on a weaker SEC part of the schedule. And I think we kind of were both sitting here like they're gonna like everyone's looking so ahead for the Texas A&M game at the end of the year. They're gonna slip up
Right.
before then. It just felt like coming off that LSU win where they pulled a quite literally like a Hail Mary by putting in the backup quarterback and it paid off. And it felt like the moment someone game planned to stop a QB run that this backup quarterback was going to get shut down. And here we are. He played good in the first half, second half, not so great. Good for the Gamecocks. I mean, they really are a couple of scores away from being probably a playoff team right now. Because they should have, was it LSU earlier this year that they should have beat?
Yeah, they lost to LSU by like 3, and there's some questionable calls at the end of that game. I know. I think there was an interception, and a South Carolina player kind of laid out LSU's quarterback, and which after the interception he became a defender, so he was eligible to be blocked or hit or whatever, and they ended up throwing a flag on it, and pick got reversed or something. I don't know. A lot of
Yeah, and
controversy
then
in that game.
it was the
In the
Bama
Bama
game where
game,
they missed a 2 point conversion to tie the game in the late in the fourth quarter. They got beat
got the
by Ole Miss pretty
onside.
good, but yeah, and then still couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're 5-3 right now. If you take, they got beat by who did I just say? Pretty good, Ole Miss. Was that what it
Ole
was?
Miss. Yeah,
If you take the 2 points from Bama and the 3 points from South LSU, whatever, they're 5 points away from being a one-loss team, and both those wins would be top-ranked team wins, and they would probably be right about where Tennessee is in the playoff rankings right now. So
yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
crazy how there's very little room for error in the SEC, and the difference of 5 points is costing you a really really good season to a just a good season and a good probably bowl game they'll get this year. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Beamer's that guy. I mean, he's. I didn't think he was probably cut out for the SEC, but they're competitive. So I mean, what are you
Yeah,
going to
at the
say?
very least, competitive. Yeah, as long as they keep winning. And I don't really know, at least right now, if the fans or just kind of the culture around South Carolina, I think they're kind of happy with where. I mean, I don't think they're expect like It's not like Alabama or somewhere where if you're not competing for championships every year, that you're gonna be on the hot seat.
Right. I mean, I just think if anything, they're probably just frustrated that they haven't closed a couple of these games out because
I agree.
that's the difference between that from good to great. That's like the next step you have to take. Sellers, their QB, I think has a bright future. He's only a freshman, so
Hmm. For
I mean
sure.
he's been playing really well, and I think that's a name we might hear for the next couple of years. Just continue to grow and develop, and I wouldn't be surprised in 2 years if South Carolina's up there competing for the top of the SEC just because of his experience as now just a
Right.
freshman, and he's playing well. So we'll have to keep an eye on them. But yeah, that's
For
that
sure.
game. Other games was I think Pitt and
Ohio
SMU.
State,
Did they
Penn
play?
State. Yeah, Pitt and
Oh yeah,
SMU. SMU gave Pitt their first loss of the season, beat them by 23. SMU continues to
yeah,
roll, man. 48-25,
yeah, no,
final score of that game.
yeah.
SMU's a good team.
Pitt finally played someone good, and SMU
Yeah,
exposed that. So that kind of showed SMU's strength, I think, in the ACC. So
yeah.
that puts them probably right now. I don't know what the standings look like, but now that Clemson has two losses,
They're
um,
first.
it's probably over Miami.
Probably a tie, but on ESPN it has them listed as first in the ACC. So that, I mean, it has to be a tie because Miami's undefeated. So that just means that neither one of them have lost an ACC game, essentially.
Yeah, and they probably have played more or something like that for whatever reason. But so yeah, that's looking like that might be the ACC championship, which would be a fun game. And I don't know. I think I'd probably sit there and bet SMU to be honest, just because why not? I think Miami's going to lose one eventually, and that'd be
Yes.
a fun one though. I wouldn't hate that.
I'll tell you what's going to be really interesting on conference championship week is some of these upsets where not necessarily in the SEC because I think right now it's going to be the winner of Tennessee Georgia is probably playing Texas uh, unless something crazy happens and but like the ACC and the Big 12 and places conferences like that, if a number 20 SMU or whatever they're ranked at the time upsets number 5 Miami, SMU gets the automatic bid. Miami's probably not going to drop out of the top 12, so it's going to really start shaking up the playoff picture. Um, if you get some of these conference championship upsets, could
It
really
would
change some
it would
things.
the automatic bid is cool, but it also could really screw some things up. And it might not this
Yeah,
year, it might not, but I could see that being a potential issue in the future. But it'd also be hard to say that SMU is not one of the best teams in the country based off of the way they've played this year. And
yeah. Where did they jump to?
um, let's see, 13th. That's in the
Okay, so they're knocking on the playoff door now.
yeah. So they
They
they,
jumped
they,
set.
they can potentially get they can get in anyways potentially, but
Right.
and that's in the CFP poll. So yeah, they're number 13,
Yeah.
first team out looking in, I guess. I mean, I mean, their best odds is to obviously run the table and probably would want. I don't know if I guess they might need to beat Miami, honestly, just because. Well, I say that, but there's teams in the SEC that are about to play each other where teams can start dropping out and they can sneak in. So I don't know. We'll keep. There's a lot to unpack in that whole CFP poll. That's for sure.
It is. They're on a bye right now, which coming off of what is that, 6 wins in a row? I don't know if that's a good or a bad place to go into a bye, but they finished the season out with Boston College, Virginia, and California. So could
Three
run the
winnable
table.
games.
Yeah, 3 winnable games for sure. But also don't need to mess up. Don't need to come out flat after a bye. I think they're playing really well right now.
Agreed. And
Other
then
than that, yeah, I'll let you handle the Ohio State Penn State game, and then that's about it.
Yeah, Ohio State, Penn State, typical run of the mill, boring Big Ten football game. That's really all there was to it. Penn State had some interesting. I think red. I don't. I saw something like they did something dumb in the red zone. They might have done some.
I don't know.
Did they?
I s-
I didn't really watch the full game, to be honest. I turned it off at halftime because I was like, "This is exactly what I expected it to be," and I was
I
disappointed. I
turned
was hoping
yeah.
it'd be a different game. And I know Ohio State has now won, is it 8 years in a row now?
I think it was 12 of the
7 or 8 years?
last 13.
Yeah, something like that. The only year was what we talked about before. It was the Saquon Barkley year. I don't know. James Franklin. I feel sorry for the guy. He just can't win the big game. Penn State forever will seem to just lose that one game to Ohio State and maybe lose another to Michigan or something like that. But probably not this year. But
Right.
I don't know. Best thing for James Franklin and Penn State is it's a 12-team playoff, and they are still projected to make it right now. And they're not going to have a home game more than likely, but they're projected it right now. I want to say in a few weeks that might change just based off of teams probably will start picking up some more quality wins as they continue to play lesser opponents. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I no offense to Big Ten football fans in Ohio State, but geez, it's so boring. It really is. It's a lot of punting and defense, and if you like that and old school football, that's the football for you. But I prefer points, and that's why Tennessee fans get so um, antsy when the Vols are not putting up the 40 points a game.
Right.
We've been a little we've been spoiled the last couple of years with some explosive offense, and it's still averaging 30 something a game, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah. But I think with that probably wraps up. I mean, other games besides that, Oregon beat Michigan pretty good. Ole Miss beat Arkansas by 30. Indiana stays undefeated. Indiana stays undefeated. Iowa
Yeah,
State
let's go to
lost.
week 11.
Let's do it. Alrighty. So I already looked at this. No big games on. So we're still in the 55 straight days of football, but no big games before Saturday. Biggest games probably, I don't know, California Wake Forest if you're a big ACC fan.
That's
But
a
to kick off,
quite literally opposite coasts playing each other. That's amazing.
yeah. So one team's gonna be tired probably. I'd probably pick the home team to win that game, which would be Wake Forest. So do what you will with that. But kicking off Saturday, November 9th, you got Purdue at Ohio, number two Ohio State. Not much to say about this. I just wanted to talk about it because there's a ranked team involved, a top 10, a top five team. Ohio State's going to win the game, and they're going to win by a lot.
Yeah, I
Next,
don't disagree.
yeah, no, I mean, not much to say. Probably could have just glossed over that one. But after that, you have Miami at Georgia Tech. I mean, we saw Georgia. We thought Georgia Tech could be a good team this year after they beat Florida State early in the season, and we were like, "Oh, this is a really good win for them." No, it turns out Florida State was just really bad. But Miami has looked fraudulent, and it seems like their luck has to run out at some point. So I'm not gonna pick Georgia Tech to win this game by any means, but I wouldn't be shocked if they make it interesting and probably get screwed out of a win somehow because that seems like what every team does when they play Miami.
Yeah, that one being in Atlanta will keep that spicy. Maybe I know they just lost to Virginia Tech
Ah,
last week, so I don't know, but
yeah,
I just I almost want to bet on Miami to lose every week until they do because I
right.
just feel like they're due, and maybe they go undefeated and win the national championship. They could. I just the way this season has gone, I just part of me just believes that they'll eventually lose, and maybe that's delusional, but
I think if not
that's
before,
my
then it'll definitely be SMU. But that would be just my
or they'll get their
take.
heart rips out in the playoffs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Well, moving forward, you have Florida at Texas, number 5 Texas now. Uh, I mean, Florida, this isn't as big of a rivalry, doesn't mean as much as it did to them as the Georgia game did, and it's at Texas. I think Texas probably goes in there and looks like the top 5 team against an unranked team. They're favored by 21 and a
Especially
half.
with Lagway not playing. Yeah, this is going to be ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, the 21 and a half
Well,
could definitely hit.
we'll see. We'll see Arch before this one's over. I promise you that.
Yeah, I'd be more surprised if we didn't. Well, getting into the first leg of this week's parlay of the week, which is it's gonna hit. I believe in it. We have Syracuse at BC. We decided to take BC -2. Syracuse has not been the best team in the world by any means this year. Neither is BC, but I think Castellanos is the clear better quarterback as opposed to McCord. And at home at 12 o'clock noon, I think BC covers by 2, probably more than that.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I don't disagree. McCord is he's had his up and down moments this season. Currently, more on a downward trajectory as of late. He had that really bad game
Right.
against Pitt a couple weeks ago. I don't know. I just think Boston College at home gets it done. It might be a close game, close fight game, but only even by 2 points, and that's what we're riding with.
Yes, sir. Well, uh, nothing else really early on in the day, so I'll let you kick off the Georgia at Ole Miss game.
So that's another part of our parlay of the week. We firmly believe Georgia's going to get it done. We took them at -2.5. Even though it's at Ole Miss, that's going to be a tougher game for Georgia. But I think Georgia's in Kirby Smart is going to get a little bit into desperation mode, and they know what's at stake, and they can't really slip up because they know they have to turn around and play the Tennessee Vols the next week, and that's
Right.
another very big one. I think their mindset is I think they clearly got to go 1-1 in the next 2 games, and I think they're probably they. I don't want to say they're more scared of Tennessee than Ole Miss, but I want to believe that because I'm a Tennessee fan. And
I
I
would
think the
agree with that.
logic behind that, I think the logic behind that would be solely be that Tennessee beat Bama, Bama beat Georgia, and I mean Ole Miss has lost to Kentucky, who another team that Tennessee has beat. So I don't know. Then again, this is a road game versus home versus Tennessee. So
Right. I think Georgia goes in there and has a good tune-up game, whatever you want to call it, before us. But it doesn't really matter what happens because I think we're going to go in there and give them everything they can take, and hopefully more than that. Here's an interesting game, and it's surprising to see Michigan being unranked now. But Michigan at number 8, Indiana. I don't know. What do you think about this game? What do you make of it? Do you think Indiana keeps it
I
rolling? Do
don't.
you think Michigan gets an upset?
Yeah, I don't think Indiana fumbles here. I just think they're going to keep it rolling. That 14-point favorite, maybe a little bit closer to like the 10-point range. But then again,
It's a
Indiana's
good
been
line.
thumping everyone they play. They've been thumping everyone we play. So
Mm-hmm.
hard to say. I don't. If this was at the big house, I could see them flopping on the road or something like that. I don't think this can be the case at home in Bloomington. So I'm gonna have to ride with Indiana on that one.
Yeah, me too. If I had to pick, it'd probably be Indiana. Um, just want to rattle these 3 off real quick. Actually, these 4, just because they all have one ranked team in them against an unranked team. Iowa State at number 17 on Iowa State at Kansas. I think that every game going forward, if you want any chance at sneaking into the playoffs for Iowa State, is probably a must-win game, and you probably need to tack on some big performances in there too. I don't even know what's their record now. Are they 2-loss? Okay, so they're only one
Seven
loss
and
right
one.
now, but they're 17th. So I don't think their chances are completely eliminated, but definitely
Well,
must-win games back against the wall.
I mean, they can go win the conference championship and be a top four team in the country. So,
That's true.
I mean,
That's
that would
also
have you'd have
true.
to beat
Nothing
BYU, but
right. So then, kind of same situation. You have Clemson at Virginia Tech. That's a conference game. You got Clemson is in a worse spot than Iowa State just because they have 2 losses now and they're 23rd in the country. Yeah, got to win if they want a chance at the playoffs, or really a chance at the ACC championship now. Because
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
I expect a good bounce back game from Clemson here, and
yeah.
that's another leg of our parlay as well. We took him at
Oh
minus
yeah, it
six and a
is.
half. I just think, even though it's a road game, Virginia Tech has actually been decent at times this year. Um, Dabo's an experienced coach, and he knows that they can't afford another loss. I understand they're at 23rd right now, but if something was to happen and SMU slipped up and lost again, they'd be right back in the race for the ACC championship. And like we've been
Right.
talking about multiple times in this show already, if you get to the ACC championship, you're a win away from it being a top four seed. I don't see a way Clemson sneaks back into the top 12 other than winning that. But that's
Yeah.
got to be your mindset at this point. Just keep winning and let the rest do the rest. And SMU, I mean, we think they are going to run the table, but crazier things have happened this season, and they don't play the easiest of teams. So, I mean, who knows? I think they're not giving up just yet. They're not on quit watch. They're not going to quit yet. And I think they have a nice bounce back game here.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with that. I mean, obviously, I agree with it. We put it in our parlay. I think Clemson wins, covers, bounce back, like you said. Uh, 25 Army at North Texas, whatever. Army's probably gonna win. Doesn't really matter. And then 20 Colorado at Texas Tech. Once again, Colorado's probably gonna win the game. They might lose. You never really know what kind of Colorado you're gonna get. But they're
I
favored
mean,
by 3.5.
Texas Tech hasn't been a slouch this year, so I wouldn't want to guarantee that
Right.
win just yet. Texas Tech is also the team that just beat Iowa State. So,
That's true. They're
and
coming off a big win.
that was Texas Tech on the road, and now they're coming home to Colorado, another
Right.
ranked team coming in.
Hmm.
They'd be playing to get ranked after this game if they won. So I wouldn't. I mean, that line is only 3 points, so don't count out the Red Raiders. It's a game that Colorado should win.
Right.
Doesn't mean they will win. I guess I'm going to put that.
I agree. So after that, 4:15 on SEC Network, you got South Carolina in Nashville against Vanderbilt. South Carolina's been playing really good. Vanderbilt's also had a pretty decent season. They've had a really good season, aside from the one loss to Georgia State. Um, I don't know. I think this one's a hard one to tell. I think South Carolina. It's hard to say South Carolina has more quality wins or whatever you want to call it because Vanderbilt did beat Alabama, who South Carolina couldn't beat. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. I'll definitely be tuning into this one. We're just going to have to wait and see.
I mean, I
What do
think
you think?
South Carolina's red hot after last week, um,
Yeah.
which goes one or two ways. They could either flop on their face the week after, or they continue the hot hand. I think Vandy is still playing good, but I think they've cooled off a little bit. Um, I don't want to say they're struggling by any means. They keep winning, but I don't think they're playing at their best as they were a couple weeks ago. But this is a very winnable home game for them, and I think the crowd might actually be a lot of more Vandy fans starting to show up. And I don't know,
Oh
like I
yeah,
think it'd be a fun game to keep an eye on and watch potentially before Tennessee plays that night. And I know I will, so I don't really know who to cheer for, but I guess I would kind of like to
doesn't
see if
matter.
Vandy can get it done.
Yeah, I would. I'll probably be cheering for the little brother, but yeah. So let's get into some night games. Not gonna talk about Oregon, Maryland. If you should, I mean, Oregon's gonna win the game. We've already talked about Tennessee, Mississippi State. Tennessee is gonna win that game, and then I guess first game before I get to the last leg of our parlay, and probably the biggest game of the week. Florida State at number 10 Notre Dame. Notre Dame's favored by 26.5. I think that's a steep spread, but they has a chance to win the game.
Um, that's probably one of the most lopsided matchups this season. I mean, I don't think Notre Dame is. I think Notre Dame is still more highly ranked than they should be. I don't think they're all
Right.
that, but Florida State,
They're just bad. They're not good
they're
at football.
bad. But who knows? I mean, I'm not going to ever call it to be close, but yeah, I don't expect this to be that much interesting of a game. Notre Dame is trying to make the playoffs and make a case for the playoffs, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a blowout.
Yeah, me neither. But getting into is this where game day is this week? I'm not sure. The Alabama
Um,
LSU game.
that's a great question. Let me look
And
it
I
up.
feel like we
I would
haven't been.
think
Yeah.
I would think it would be there. It is. It is there at Baton
Good.
Rouge. So
Yeah. That's gonna be a huge game. For both teams. I think LSU has a shot to make the playoffs. They got to win this game. They're at 15 right now, so kind of in that first group out. But I mean, like you
it's an
said,
elim-
they're still what are they? One loss in the SEC, so they still have a chance to
yeah.
get in there into the
It's an
SEC
elimination
championship.
game.
It is an elimination game.
You lose, you're done. Season's done. Sorry. Like no and if or buts about it. You can't make the SEC championship. You can't make it in the top 12. So now winning raises your chances. That's for sure. But we chose that LSU is going to win this one at home. It's another part of our parlay. We think that Brian Kelly is going to get a big win. Finally get a big win. And make that loss number 3 for Kalen DeBoer in year 1, which
So
Bama fans will not want to see or hear.
is this an elimination game for Alabama as well?
Oh, for both teams, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. They would, 100% because that's 3 losses for Bama. That's you're done, and then
Yeah.
LSU could creep back in with a win. If they lose, 3 losses for them. Yeah, they're done too, and that'd be 2 losses in conference play, so they're not going to make the conference championship. So yeah, that's what I meant. It's
You're right.
winner go home.
For both teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's that. I think LSU wins. I think they win by I don't know. I'd probably have to say probably like 3 or something. Make an exciting game if I had to pick. But other games besides that on Saturday night include Oklahoma at Missouri. Could be an interesting one. Maybe Oklahoma pulls off an upset. Not sure. You got Washington at Penn State, which Penn State is for some reason ranked higher than Tennessee right now. But maybe they have a good bounce back game. Who knows? You have Nevada at the in Boise, watching the Boise State Genties play after dark once again. He's kind of been cooling off. What do you think about that? I think they've been handing him the ball a lot
He,
more recently, but he hasn't had his 200, 300-yard games yet or anymore.
I mean, yeah, his yards per carry is like cutting in half, or
Yeah,
I mean less. I mean, he's back to reality a little bit. I would say 5 yards carry is good for like it's good to be like one of the best running backs in the country is probably averaging that, but it's dropping from that 10 yards a carry, that's for sure. And they are feeding the heck out of him now. So if he wasn't getting 30 carries, he probably wouldn't even be getting his 150 yards. He
right.
obviously was earlier in the season. There's no denying that. But we kind of wondered how long that could sustain just due to wear and tear. But I mean, I personally would still cast my my voting. What am I trying to say here? I'd cast my vote for him on my ballot for
For
Heisman.
Heisman,
If I was a voter, that's who I'd go for at this point still. But that gap is definitely closing at this point.
I agree. Um, Especially with people like
There's a
Gabriel, Ward, guys
there's a
like
lot
that.
of Dylan Gabriel and Cameron Ward hype as of recent. So
Yeah. Then they want to give it to a quarterback. That I don't think that's a shocker to anyone. If they have a reason not to give it to a running back, they're not going to.
right.
But yeah, last two. Other than that, their only other ranked games on Saturday include Virginia at Pittsburgh. We'll see if Pittsburgh can get a bounce back game after losing their first game of the season. BYU at Utah, which could end up being a good game. BYU's only favored by 3.5, but conference game, Big 12.
In-state rivalry.
It is an in-state rivalry. I'm sure that BYU fans are going to be at the Utah game. The I don't know, Battle of Salt Lake City, or I don't know, Battle of Utah. Um, and then
There might be an actual term for it. I don't know.
I'll look it up. But Utah versus BYU title. What's the rivalry called? Holy War. That's fitting.
Oh yes, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see who comes out on top in the Holy War. And at 10:30 at night, I didn't realize Wazoo made it into the rankings. Uh, Utah State at number 21, Washington State. Good for them.
Yeah, they've been sneaky winning games here or there, and
Yeah, they
and
have
they're
been.
very very lonesome Pac-12, Pac-2.
They're gonna win the conference, you think?
um, who's their competitor? Oregon State.
Yeah.
I guess so. I don't know how Oregon State's doing. So
Uh, well, you have anything else to say about any of the games? I know I kind of sped through a lot of them. I just don't think there was too much to talk about with those. Some of
there's
those more
definitely
lopsided games.
definitely some yeah definitely some blowout territory this week. So I think we'll show this week's week 11 parlay of the week just because we already highlighted all the games, but we'll just recap just to make it visually appealing for when we put this on TikTok.
Let's do it.
Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So on DraftKings, the site that I use for this one, $10 to win 151. I think the odds was plus 14 something. We took Georgia minus 2.5 to have a nice bounce back performance as they've been a little bit sluggish against Florida. Win by 2.5 at Ole Miss on the road. Keep their playoff hopes and dreams alive. SEC championship hopes and dreams alive. Then we think Boston College is going to beat a Syracuse team who's been struggling as of late at home by 2. Then we're going to take LSU money line against the Crimson Tide at home. That's going to be Death Valley at night. We think it's a hard place to play, arguably the hardest place to play in college football. And we think that crowd's going to be enough. And I don't think Kalen DeBoer handled Neyland Stadium too well this season. So we'll have to see how him and Milrow adjust for communication and stuff like that. And then we're going to take Clemson to have a bounce back game, -6.5 at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech playing decent this year, but Clemson desperately needs to have a good bounce back game after the Louisville collapse last week. And hopefully we make a profit of $141.22 this week. That's without any boosts. There's obviously boosts on these apps, and I mean you can use any betting app as you wish. Tails to be there. Up to you.
Bet responsibly.
We don't have. Yeah, bet responsibly. We don't have the best record in the world. We get greedy at times instead of taking the easy play from time to time. However, yeah, that's week 11, parlay of the week, and game predictions. And we covered all of week 10, Tennessee's games. So I think that's all for today's episode. One thing we will say is we're going to drop to just keep doing one episode a week right now due to work restrictions. So just because we haven't had much time, hopefully around Christmas time, things will kind of open back up a little bit and we can find more time to start talking basketball, which is what we want to kind of lean towards. Tennessee Vols basketball is picking up here soon. So we can talk all things college hoops, highlight the NBA. Around that time, the NFL playoffs will be kicking off or close to it. So a little playoff push there. So, yeah, a lot of exciting things coming up. But for right now, we're going to stick with our college football just because everyone loves college football in this country. It's the best sport, in my opinion. But, yeah, that's it for today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and YouTube and Spotify, Twitter, and Twitter. I don't know if I mentioned that one, but
Instagram, Spotify, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok.
Gosh, I'll never get this right. And we're on try number 19. Try number 19. Regardless, follow us on all those things. Hopefully have this posted soon. When you're hearing this, it might be Friday morning. Could be Thursday morning. Don't know when I'll have it done. And then have a good weekend and stay tuned for our clips on TikTok so you can kind of break things down. So,
yeah,
y'all take care, and we'll see y'all next week.
Take it easy, y'all.